Happy Monday. Welcome to Usually Wrong, episode 60. How about that? That's a lot of episodes. Hope you like it. Hope you like the show. This is with Brandon Johnson. We'll get to him in just a second. I am going to be in Columbus for most of this week and throughout the weekend for the Whiskey Bear Comedy Festival. If you'd like to come see those shows, go to natenault.com. I will be back in Pittsburgh on Friday for the American Serbian Club show that I'm putting on over in the South Side. Get tickets to that straight from my website or on Facebook or Eventbrite or DM me and I'll get you tickets for free because you listen to this show. This is with Brandon Johnson, who I've known for a lot of years. Very funny comic. He's local to Pittsburgh. And we have a good talk. We talk about comedy. We talk about notes. We talk about a lot of stuff. So leave the show 5 stars, subscribe, and enjoy episode number 60 of Usually Wrong with Brandon Johnson.
When we finally got down to something which the individual says he really wants to do, I will say to him, you do that and forget the money. Because if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You will be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living. That is, to go on doing things you don't like doing, which is stupid. Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way.
What the hell was I thinking?
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, from the mics that we go to the people that we interact to, the other comedians, they're obviously DIY.
Oh, yeah.
From the shirts, from their jokes, from everything else is DIY.
I think almost all comedy is to some certain degree until you get like industry, right? I think I feel gross saying that word, but like until you get to that level. And I think comedy is also it's very entrepreneur like, right? I mean, you're basically starting your own business. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think the entrepreneurial aspect is good because you have to have this drive, this hustle, this sort of determination to make sure that everything else is going to happen. And you could be you could be Jeff Bezos, or you could be or Kurt or I was going to say you could be Jeff Bezos to George Lopez to anybody else, and then you start to get merch.
Then you start to get merch.
Yeah,
You sell
so you have to do that. So you have to hustle not only for your jokes, but then also for the shirts, for the stickers, for whatever else you want to purchase or whatever else you want to sell.
Yeah.
And then you get the network stuff, and then they have to basically try to sell you while you're selling yourself.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't go through, you have to kind of go on tour to try and sell something about you. You're giving so much of yourself away, but all the comedians are still very private individuals away from stuff.
That is 100% true. On stage, I think the best comedians are giving the most of themselves on stage. My girlfriend was even telling me, she was at a conference today because she works at PNC and there's like speakers and stuff. And they said, musicians and comedians are actually the most introverted people that you'll meet. And that is true to a big degree. You have to be a exaggerated version of yourself on stage. And I feel like I'm getting better at that.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, well that's the thing, especially whenever you're starting out in comedy, much like I hear people talk about professional wrestling and also the music business. It's like, hey, we've performed for you for 2 hours, we're gonna leave. We're gonna go back and get single serve pizzas and just go to sleep, or they haven't reached that point to where they're comfortable around themselves. So it's like, hey, we're going to bring the party back to our hotel room, and we're going to do about $2,000 worth of damage, bring in some other stuff because we don't want to be around ourselves.
Yeah. Well, that's people, right? Like, that's not even like comedians, right? Like, people, I think just regular civilians do the same thing, right?
I mean, having worked at a hotel for about a little over a year and a half, I could say it's it's good for some. We've had some famous clientele that after they got finished over PPG paints, or if they got finished performing somewhere around the city, they just wanted to kind of go back and not really promote the stuff.
Yeah.
And then we've also had like proms and after parties there,
Oh, yeah.
where they stayed upstairs, went to the
Yeah.
ballroom downstairs, and then tried to bring everything else upstairs. And it was a lot of calls that we had to make.
Well, I'll even. I'm not a professional, right? But like, I'll point it to me. If I have a really good, and I shouldn't even say that. If I have a set that did okay, or I shouldn't even say that. Any set that I have that is longer than 15 minutes, let's say it goes well, the last thing I want to do is go party. The last thing I want to do is be engaged with people anymore. I'm done. I gave myself in that 10, 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. My brain capacity for performing in front of anybody else it's gone. It's really gone. Like, I can't do it in that. I have to recharge. Do you relate to that?
Yeah, I think that's why after we perform, once we get the money, show money is the best money. we just want to be like, yo, we're gonna hang around with one another because I could stand you. So if we're on like a bill of maybe 3 to 4, I will go back and want to be around with just you 3 to 4.
Okay, I understand.
And then afterwards, like, we'll probably get something to eat, talk more about the set, talk about all the other stuff that's going around with us that has to deal with it. And then once it comes to be about that time, go home, go to bed.
Yeah.
Or pay somebody else to just leave. That's how it is.
Yeah, I look at you as one of the most devoted members in this scene. Are you, what's the word? What's the question I'm trying to ask? Let's start at the beginning. How long have you actually been doing stand-up? I have not gotten a good answer from you on this. I don't know the answer to it.
I'm pretty sure I have answered it, but a lot of
You
people,
have.
whenever I do, they forget.
They forget.
Yes, so I have formally been around the scene since about 2008, 2009.
I knew it was a
Pittsburgh
while. I knew it was a long
superfan.
time.
And I didn't start doing comedy until about 5 years ago. It should be year 6
Okay.
at the end of May. So within that time, like 4 years of just being at just about every open mic, seeing a lot of people rise, seeing a lot of people do it and then stop.
Go away. Right.
Picking up on notices and giving feedback to the other comedians, which allowed me to be the super fan because I would give them notes on their sets.
Super fan.
And they would, yeah, man, I was Pittsburgh's #1 super fan for like that strong 4 years. And even still, I'll still go to a bunch of events that I'm not even on. I'll still see if like it's a good venue. Still take notes, give some people feedback.
Are you conscious about doing that? Because every Facebook post, there is a Brandon Johnson comment, and I'm not saying that maliciously. I'm saying that like that's a good thing. I think that super fan. I think that is part of it because I think you have to be a fan of comedy and especially the scene that you're in too. I think you have to be. If you're reserved, if you're taken out of it, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you like right before you talk every time. But I think you have to be. I think you have to be engaged with people if you want to build your name in the scene, but also build the scene itself. I think we need more people who are super fans like that.
And that's the thing. I came along whenever there were just people that were doing it. So after like that year or so, they were like, "Why don't you go ahead and do it?" And I was like, "Nah." I'll let other people that just like really jumped in. I just wanted to sit back and observe.
Okay.
It helped me a lot more because I went from the juxtaposition of like everybody else. I watched a lot of comedy growing up. I had a different view and sense of humor. And then I was also very observant of how people would react to this joke, this punchline that the performer was giving. So whenever it came about, I was just trying to be like, yo, this punchline that you delivered at this point really hit.
Yeah.
The setup for this other one, it needs a little bit of work because if you're going through a paid show, if I'm paying it, I'm like, yo, that's something you might want to stay at the open mic and keep on working. And then from there, they sounded, everything else I told them sounded really good. And then from now to where I'm performing still, for like a lot of the younger comics, they still, I don't know if it's generationally, I don't know if it's like the social awkwardness, but they're still kind of, some of them will come up to talk to me and I make myself as pretty much presentable as I can.
Right.
Still engage with them, and then others are still kind of like shying away to like maybe their own clique, their own group, and still going about that. But I'm all about advancement. I'm all about making sure that if you guys do well on the scene, eventually it'll come back to me if I'm not already into it. And then from there, seeing where else this comedy ride is going to take us.
Well, but it's not you specifically with the click thing that you said. Like, I've talked about it 1,000 times on here. I mean, I think any group like this is bound to be a little bit clicky, right? Based off of how long you've been doing it, based off of who maybe your act is not similar to, but who also you find funny. I think I hang out with the people that like I find really funny.
Yeah,
I think that's part of it.
I noticed you kind of gravitate towards a group of maybe three to four comedians. One of them around the city also looks like you. You grew up with them. And
Joe
a few other
Marchi.
People. I mean,
Marchi.
if we'll say,
You can
other
say it.
comedians, feel
Who cares?
free. Yes.
Have you listened to an episode of this? I don't care if you have, but have you listened to an episode of this?
Yes.
We
I
name
have.
drop all the time.
So
To like,
I'll try and use the conscious name drop, but Joe's he's a very good host, and I'm glad to see these back on the scene. But it's weird to see myself seeing other people get grouped up, whereas I'm just gravitating amongst everybody, whether it's the new guys, whether it's the people that have been now starting to get onto the improv, whether it's people that are just about to leave, whether it's everybody else. I think it's helped me out a lot because I'm not based around one specific group of feedback or group of other comedians, but also at the same time, if they're off doing their shows, they seem to be just promoting within their group. So if one guy gets a show, he's going to pass it along to his other friend, and one other guy, instead of being like, okay, let's try and put on maybe the funniest one that we can. And if we're only like a couple years in, we're both still like have a lot of open mic jokes, but you want to take that to a paid show, and it hasn't gone through all of the different filters, through all the different channels. It hasn't been like scratched up. It hasn't been clawed up enough to where it could be presented to like a larger paying audience. Then that's what you get, I think, now in Pittsburgh.
but okay, I understand. Like, I completely understand what you're saying. Now that I'm booking my own shows, I am repaying the people who put me on shows. That is definitely it. But those people who put me on shows are funny. Like, that's a blessing. The people who have been putting on shows are actually like, they're funny, right? Like, so it doesn't feel bad to, and we're in a Pittsburgh city, right, where there's so many different kinds of acts that you can put on shows, right? Like, I look at the We Got Next guys, and they'll put on everybody, but there's so much talent in this city where they can pinpoint who to put on a show and how is it going to blend, how is it going to make the best show possible. So I understand what you're saying.
Well, thankfully I've been able to get on with We Got Next on a couple shows, and a few other people. I think, but it's weird for me, like I said, because I see the podcasts like in groups and everything else that's starting to form. They're starting to get their sense of comedy out there. They're starting to form a lot of how they want to be able to progress, and then eventually move out to the next city, and then eventually go about doing that. It's a good thing to see.
Right.
I can say that I'm happy for that. For me, sometimes, as far as like getting onto shows specifically, I've almost kind of had to do a lot of stuff, search and scout by myself.
It's DIY.
And then
Right.
I think I would say more entrepreneurial than the DIY. The DIY for me, like template, almost seems like what is going on at Hambones now. That's very DIY, as opposed to any shows that are around the city, even like not even the improv, like anything between. You have the improv, which isn't DIY, that's very much industry, and then you have Hambones, which is very much DIY. Every single weekend they have a different person that's not, you wouldn't see on there, and also having openers, and also having maybe a list of about 30 or so comics that they want to choose from.
Right.
I may not be one of those ones, but I'll still come out to the show, and I'll still be able to check it out, tweet, or maybe not tweet, but I'll still put it up on my social media.
I understand.
So I'll go ahead with that, just because I enjoy seeing it. But I think I'm still waiting and still working on myself to make sure that I'm able to get out to stuff around the city.
Yeah.
So whether it's New York, whether it's a couple shows that I have coming up I'll promote here, whether it's anything else. It's kind of like I'm trying to ride a different wave whenever it hits me. And whenever I do, if I'm still able to bring somebody else on who I think is funny outside of Click, outside of whatever group it is, I try and at least give that to them, or at least I try and say, hey, this is a good show. I've done it. This is a good resource. This guy's a good booker. Hey, you should maybe reach out to them.
Yeah, well, you're extending love. Like that. That's what it feels like it is. You're extending love to people who you actually want to see get better, too. That's what I think is a great thing about this scene. I mean, a couple months ago, John Dick Winters would give feedback after a set at Hambones on a Monday night. And I thought, like, that's amazing. Like, we don't have stuff like that outside of classes, right? Like, I can't really, other than a group of friends bouncing ideas off of each other and say, this was shit, this was great, this was shit. We don't have a lot of stuff like that in the city.
That's true, because I've been to New York, and they actually do have mics and shows where it's just all about 7 different comedians, one kind of host, and then they give their set. And then what I did was I kept the recorder running, so whatever sort of feedback they would get amongst the other performers, whether it was punchline, whether it was setup, whether it was material, whether it was some stuff I should have thrown away. And it lasts like maybe 90 minutes, maybe an hour or so. They say like to maybe around that, and it's good. It's something that hits. It's something that you could go take with you next week. Something like this here in this city, there's always been talk about it. There's been different things that have been going on, but nothing really long term, nothing really established, nothing that's been something that we could kind of circle the calendar. It's like, hey, I have these 3 new bits. I'm going to go to this mic workshop, show, whatever else you want to call it. And then after that, I'm going to be able to take their notes and then be able to apply it to my act.
Yeah.
And then be able to like say, hey, this one's show ready within a month, within a couple weeks, off of the feedback that they gave me.
Right. How much time have you spent out of the city doing comedy? New York probably is why I was asking.
Yeah, I was like a good week and a half, maybe going on a year now. My family that lives near there, so I try to make a
in New York
out there.
Or around New York. They do.
Yes. So
were you born there?
No, born and raised here in Pittsburgh.
Oh, you were born and raised in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
okay.
they thankfully they moved out and to the Oranges, the South Orange, and now they're in West Orange. My family.
Okay.
So I have a chance to go back out there sometime this summer. I try and make it like maybe yearly to get out so I can be able to get that feedback going.
Yeah.
I had a chance to perform in West Virginia sometime about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
But also while I'm in the different cities, I'm making connections with those comedians there.
Right.
And then we're interacting back and forth like, hey, this is a new bit I'm working on. This is some stuff I put up. What sort of stuff is going on? I'll be like, hey, this one's good. Keep going. This one, I don't know about like how things are going. And sometimes I do it through Facebook posts. A lot of times it may be DMs. DMs are good for me because if I make a connection outside of the city, whether it's a booker or somebody else that's doing comedy like another comedian, and they eventually become a booker and they eventually start putting together their own shows,
Right.
It's like, we want to bring some out-of-town talent, so maybe it's you. Or can you recommend somebody else? Or I'm about to come into the city. What sort of stuff should I do?
Well, again, that's the entrepreneur side of it, right? I mean, that's the networking part of it. And part of that, like, drives me crazy a little bit. Like, I've talked to a billion people about this, but it's like there's the art side and there's the business side. And if you're too far to one side of either of those, it's not going to work. And I've even talked to people, it's more business side. And I hate that answer, but it is almost true. The networking side of it seems to be just as important as the words you're saying on stage. And that's a frustrating thing to me, right? Like, you come into here and you work on a craft every night. You work on art every night. And then I'm not as thrilled about the idea of selling myself as I am. What is the funniest thing that I can possibly say?
I think and it's all about time. As if it's not just Gary Goldman posting his stuff on Twitter, which is fantastic.
Oh, it's fantastic.
So far.
It's really great.
It's really about long lasting. So I may say something to a comic that's 2 years in, give him some feedback, give him some knowledge, give him just something like that. It may not be deposited or show in his act for like another 2.5 years, another year,
right.
Maybe like in the next couple of weeks. And I may try and reach out to somebody that's doing comedy in a different, bigger city, but I may not be able to get them over here to Pittsburgh for another year and a half, and they may not be ready to venture out in 2 years.
Yeah, but you hit on a point there that I'm trying to phrase it in my own way. What am I even trying to say? Okay, so let's talk about the Gary Goldman stuff, right? That stuff is so valuable to me as a starting comic. But what he is also doing is there's so many points that any stand-up comic can relate to. And I have felt myself, even in the little, like I'm holding my fingers right here, the tiniest bit of success in this so far, kind of rest on laurels a little bit. And that's a dangerous thing. Because it hasn't hit me to where I'm not doing stand-up anymore, right? But like I haven't gone to as many open mics as I did when I started. I used to go to 6 or 7 on a weekly basis. I'm going to 2 or 3 now. And it's like, okay, well, what needs to change?
Yeah, and that's the thing where, especially if you're starting out, you want to try to consume as much as you possibly can, even though it may not even show up, and it may not hit you until 3 years, 4 years down the line. And I think that's like the way I speak to some of the openers, or at least some of the headliners at the Improv and things along those lines. It's like now I'm at the age where, and I've been doing stand-up long enough to where it's like, yo, this applies to me like now.
Yeah.
This applies to me like something I maybe should have been doing a little bit earlier, but now I'm in the mindset to where it hits. So
Right.
if I'm receiving it now, it's hitting now instead of receiving it and then like 3 years down the line, oh man, boom, then this should have happened.
Right, but yes, you're correct. And that's a valuable skill, because stand-up is not something that you can tell me advice right here, and it doesn't matter until you get back on stage again. You're not able to exercise that, right? Like if you gave me advice about playing the guitar and I had a guitar sitting in front of me, I can figure out what the advice that you are telling me. I can adjust my technique, adjust the way that I'm playing the instrument. But with stand-up, you have to play the instrument on stage to get any better at it.
Yeah, you have to be in the game. So it's one thing to be practicing a certain sport, whether it's team sports, whether it's individual sport. I could be a tennis pro and telling you, hey, your serve technique is a bit off. You need to increase your velocity on your swing whenever you start a match point. It's like, okay, I'm playing it now, but if I have to face Novak Djokovic, then it's going to be like, yo, that
Right.
dude has already like captured all the championships I want to, and I'm just now starting out. So now whenever I'm facing him, it's like 40 love already. I'm like, what did he tell me? I'm trying to do it now, and I'm still getting crushed 40 love. Now it's match point. Now I'm about to take my bags out and go cry in the car. So you have to like do all of that. I think that's what we're doing now. But for me, it's like if I want to get to like meeting somebody like Novak, I have to be confident in my game to where it's like, yo,
Right.
I'm at this major, I'm at this tournament, I'm at this show, and I'm there on my own laurels. It seems like I don't know who I conned. I don't know what I did to be able to get there to be on the same stage as you guys.
Yeah.
But I'm here, and I have to bring everything else that I have as my toolbox, is everything else that I have in my act. I have to be able to do that so that I can be able to receive good feedback from them, and they're letting me know, you know, you're all right. You just keep on doing what you're doing, or hey, these are the 3 things that I've noticed that help me out that I want to be able to tell you. You're worthy enough for me to tell this, and I think you'll be able to get it. And not only will you get it, but it'll help you out to where we're doing more shows together.
Right. When did you feel comfortable giving other people notes? Because I look at it, I'm 2 years in, and I know I have valuable experience to offer people in this small, brief window. I don't have as much as other people, right? Like you and stuff. But what, even on this podcast, I'll tell people something that helped me, and I'll still feel silly saying it, because the podcast is called Usually Wrong for a reason. Like,
Yes.
I don't know a lot. So when did you feel comfortable giving people notes?
Like, I want to say within a month of checking out the open mics in the city. I started getting, like, back in 08, like, I didn't have a car and I didn't have cable, but I did have a bus pass. So I was like, okay, let me get out and see what what the stand up thing is. So I
Right.
started seeing a few comics with the limited amount of mics. There's like a lot of mics now,
Right.
but with like the limited amount of mics, I was still able to get around and make it to work the next day to where I wasn't like too tired.
Right.
And then with these guys, they have been in it for like 6 years, 3 years or so. But I know that I've been watching the best of, whether it was Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Carlin, Red Fox, one of my personal favorites, if it wasn't Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle, but also going back to the Dick Gregorys, going back to it's like even Don Rickles,
Okay. Yeah.
Rodney Dangerfield.
Right.
So I'm able to riff on all these because I either read their biography, I've studied them and how they had a chance to deliver. And once again, back to me being observant. If I'm in the crowd and you guys are at an open mic running through some stuff, it's like, you know what? I want to be able to tell you, yo, that joke was funny because I got it. I saw 2 or 3 other people laughing that you may or may not have seen,
Right.
but they were laughing. Or, hey, this one maybe needs a little bit more work because the crowd started to respond this way, but then they kind of fell flat whenever you delivered that. So if I combine those two, then I felt confident. And I was maybe 20. I was in like my mid 20s. So I was
Right.
like, so myself and the comics were the same age, or they were a bit younger than me. So I was like, hey, I'm paying attention to you. And anybody at the time was like, whoa, this guy's actually not only paying attention to me, but he wants to be able to give me some stuff to make me feel better.
Yeah, and I think people could trust that advice because, okay, you were observant with them, which means you are observant in life, which means that's going to make you a better stand-up. I've found myself being more observant about my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, my surroundings 2 years ago when I started doing stand-up. That's when I started to really become observant about what's going on. And that I think that lends to I think that lends its hand in being a successful comedian.
Yeah, and I think outside of being observant, that's one of the things that Chappelle and Rock and Seinfeld, whenever he has to do observational humor, you have to be a pretty observant guy to come up with a good 20 minutes on just airline material.
Exactly.
And for Chris Rock, you have to be like a really observant guy to notice how divorce hits a guy, or how this system that we kind of live in is so messed up that I have to form a joke where I tell so much truth about it. You're going to laugh. You're going to think about it like, man, this really is messed up. Here's my money. Just tell me some more messed up stuff about the truth that I haven't thought about, but you did, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, but you know what hit me a couple of weeks ago when I was writing? I was thinking about earlier jokes that I had, some that I still use, and I realized those were observations and then opinions. Lately, over the last maybe 6 months, I was writing observations and no opinions. It's one thing to have an observation and say, okay, this, and this, but it's hard to take that and go from observation to joke. To me, it is. I can easily go from observation to opinion to joke. That is how I've been writing the last maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And that's been successful, I think. I could be wrong.
No, well, that's the thing. In those couple weeks, you got to figure how many jokes have I actually made. So it's like, out of that, you made some observations, okay, but you're trying to skip out the opinion. How many jokes? How many of your delivery have you had a chance to put down? It's been kind of small, so if it may fit into maybe 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 6 minutes or so, as opposed to like the 15 that you want to build, as opposed to everything else that you want to build. So out of the weeks that you've been writing, and even I find this with myself, like every maybe couple weeks, 3 or every month, I'll try and have like a new 5 that I could add on to
Right.
whatever else I already have. Sometimes I have to go back and look at whatever I was listening to last year. What was I thinking about last year, and how does it maybe apply to this year? So
And
that
how has
kinda
it
eases
changed?
and that helps ease the writing process. So you're not just coming out with things out of your mind, because some things, like if it's not some of the like remakes that we're having now, Marvel's big. So like my jokes over the past couple weeks have been how the remakes are coming out and how terrible they are, and they're kind of like Hollywood's kind of bereft of ideas, whereas somebody else is just like, you know what, the things that have been happening with the presidency. Now I think I'm going to start maybe getting a little bit political onto that. Not me, but that's how.
I
that's how some people-
understand.
That's how some people are doing, and even yourself with the stuff that you're doing, like that's coming across in like maybe 5 minutes. So I have to see that 5 minutes how it applies to the one mic, as opposed to another mic. Then as opposed to if it's show ready, see how it performs at that show.
Correct. Okay. Yes, I get that. I 100% understand what you're saying. I'm agreeing with you. To me, it's so much easier to find a joke when I have a hard stance on something, and it almost doesn't matter what the material is. If I have 5 minutes of aggressive material on how I love Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I think that's funny. I think having an aggressive, hard stance on something, I think that's so much easier to write jokes about than observation to joke. I think that's that to me is like a billion times easier than, observation, opinion, joke. Just having a blatant opinion on something. Think about like the jokes that you've heard all your life. Don't they start with some sort of opinion? You know what I mean?
I think, or at least for me, I gravitate towards the comedians that tell you a bit of a fact, or at least it may be an observation, but it's like a fact. Like if I watch a lot of Chris Rock, whether it was Tambourine, whether it was Bring the Pain, whether it was Bigger and Deffer, like he would come out with a fact, maybe do a bit of an opinion or an observation about his life, but he would come out with a fact of things that were happening at the time, and then be able to just go head on into the different ideas that came about. Like, how does this person feel about this fact? How am I going to be able to change my perspective to make sure that you laugh at this fact and how it's affecting your life? It goes back to, like I said, I take my money for the truth that I didn't even think about, that now I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Those are the comedians I kind of gravitate towards.
Okay,
and as opposed to some of maybe like the stream of consciousness guys that are just pulling stuff out of their mind and being able to make a series of jokes about that. And sometimes, going back to the observations that you make, I try not to make sure, I guess, that they're too topical, because hopefully like Hollywood will have like a new like turnaround to where like they'll actually start bringing out some original content, and I'm not always about the rewrites. And it's like, hey man, they did the rewrites last year, so it becomes dated.
Well, that's why political humor is so hard, especially the last 3 years. Is if you have a joke about what happened today, motherfucker, that a week from now, I can't. You're gonna have to remind me. You're gonna have 3 minutes of setup to remind me what happened last week. What did the president tweet? I don't remember. I don't remember anything that he tweeted last week. I remember what he tweeted today. 3 weeks from now, that's gone.
Yeah, and it's weird because you also have so many other things that should be kind of remaining into a person's joke, but because of our times, because of our social media, because of now how our minds are programmed to do 60-second or 3-page digestible stuff, that it's all of a sudden forgotten. Like school shooting jokes. Every single new comedian that wants to kind of do edgy stuff. They'll go into like that, and then it's like, okay, the nation mourned. But then by next week, it's like, man, you're still doing the school shooting thing. And there's been like another one. So now I have to kind of update that. So it's like, it keeps on getting edgy, but then like let there not be anything for maybe 2 months, and you become that school shooting guy that hasn't like kind of advanced towards anything else. Like, as he talked about like the gun reform that goes into the school shooting, as he talked about the school reform, what sort of schools were going on, what sort of reaction did the nation have, and breaking it down farther, he's just going in with school shooting, bullets, and teachers having sex with one another. So it's like it's that type of stuff that can really wear on you and make you either not funny after a while, or once you go for like too much of the shock, like a lot of younger
Newer
people
comics,
go to.
that's like, that's just a thing.
And it's like now, and I guess I'm kind of glad that now, after I think it takes about 2 years or so before you, hopefully, if you're smart enough, if you've been around enough people, you start to lose the edge.
Yeah.
And then whenever I try and tell people, like younger comics, like maybe a year and a half, say, hey, go for the funny over the shock.
Yeah.
But now it's like, hey, all I got is shock. This is what I'm in for. And it's like you go through like that whole first year of bombing, you go through like that year and a half, second year of bombing, maybe getting on one show and being happy about that, but you got the 5 minutes on the show, so it's like, okay, this is how you make it. I'm still doing edgy stuff where you see other people getting booked on stuff when they have more lasting material, more funny material, and then it's
More jokes.
thank you,
I
more
mean, right.
jokes. So a lot of that, it's foreign to you until, once again, like after maybe about the 2 years, it's like, oh, I'm don't want to be that edgy guy. I want to
Yeah.
make people laugh and get stuff.
Yeah, I relate to that. I mean, I kind of realized in the last, I've never been edgy, but like I have jokes that are like come on, man. Like I do a joke about like Chinese food, and I end it with I've ended it since I started. It was like one of my first jokes, and I've been ending it with like I want to hold my sweet and sour chicken up while still purring. And lately I've been like, motherfucker, why? Like there's that's not edgy necessarily, but that is lazy. Like that's a lazy
Hack.
joke, right? That is hack to like the nth degree. And it only dawned on me recently. Like that is a hacky punchline. Like that took a modicum of, is that it? Modicum of,
Yes.
Is that it?
Modicum.
I say that is like, that's not creative. It's not funny. It's pretty offensive, and it's just shock value. It's just like, oh, like I don't get laughs from that joke. I get ohs, and I've been saying it. Like I'm done saying that, because it's like, oh, okay, you're 2 years into this. You're 2 years and 2 months in. You have grown as a comedian, where even little stuff like that. Nate Knopf is not an edgy person, but there's like, you're exactly right. You fine tune the things that, okay, there's better ways. There's better premises. There's better tags. There's better punchlines that emphasize your creativity more than your shock value.
Yeah, and I think it also goes hand in hand with the economy of the words that you use, because you do have to use a lot of 4-letter words that a lot of us have to use that can only be said at a primetime show. Nothing before 6, like in the way that you had a chance to express that, or the premise that you had to drop about the Chinese food and while
Right.
it's purring. So then it's like, if I were to tell you, and I may have done this before, like maybe sometime last year,
Yeah.
like, yo, that was kind of hacked. That was kind of think
I don't
about
think
some
you've
more
ever
stuff.
told me. I would remember if you told me that.
Well, and that's the thing. If you do tell somebody at that point, whenever they're maybe not ready to receive it after it's about that year, then that's where it's like, okay, I'm gonna kind of like, wow, it feels like you're attacking me. It's not coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of judgment.
Yeah.
Even though it's not the case, but I'm only like a year in, so it's like my defenses are up.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what?
For
I'm
sure.
going to turn away. Anybody else, don't listen to Brandon because he said X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't even make sense. So now all the other first year guys are just like, man, he said some nice stuff to me, but he said that to you?
Yeah,
Really?
I
You?
get it.
Oh, so now I have to be like this thing. And some of those comics, they have stopped doing comedy. Other ones, they have, after like year 2, once it starts to click, it's now they're coming back to me. It's like, yo, I may not have
Coming
talked to you.
back.
I haven't talked, and I haven't talked to you for like a solid year and a half. But it's like, yo, it finally, and if they're honest with themselves, and I appreciate for them, it's like, yo, you tried to tell me this X amount of months ago, X amount of years ago, and it finally hit. Then thank you, because that's what I was initially. That's all I was initially
That's
saying.
why you
man.
give the notes.
Yeah, but now I think for me, being around even like a lot of older comics that have been doing it for 10 plus years, and that's not even really that old, 10, 12, 15 years, they're just like, you know what, just be in there, don't say anything. It's something that they have to go through, something that they all have to go through, and whenever they reach out to you, that's whenever maybe you start making notes. That's maybe when you start getting a little bit more feedback, because whenever you're like a couple months in, you're asking everybody, hey, how does this feel? How does this feel? How does this feel? How does this? You do that, but then you, after like maybe 7 months, it's like, oh, this is how I'm going to be for year 10, year 3, because I have this amount of experience. After the first year and a half, it's like, this is how it is. And then you start to think, man, that is kind of hacky. Maybe all the stuff that I said 7 months in, God, what the hell was I
Yeah,
thinking?
I know, right, man?
This was
that's part of it.
This
It's
is
like-
it.
That's the best example I have of that. Like, I can't think of another bit that I have that is even remotely offensive. And again, it's maybe opinion stuff. And here's a question for you too. A lot of notes that you give. Do you still feel like you are growing as a comic?
Oh, very much so. I think with every joke that I write, I may have a standard formula of maybe delivery, but now like my mind has to be expanded to outside of topical stuff. I have to get more observational with stuff, and also as life goes on, I've had a chance to experience different stuff that came out into my act.
You've
whether it's-
experienced it. Yeah.
So that way, that helps expand my mind to try to become a newer, a better comic.
Yeah.
And also, like I said, talking to the headliners at the Improv, talking to people that have been in it, that have been at it for 12, 15 years, and always asking them, like, what sort of tips would you give? Even though I'm
Right.
6 years in, there's still like a lot of hints. Even though people only say, "Yeah, you're on the right path. You're gonna do this," but what else? Like I always
Right.
think, what else? Because if you're giving it to me now, it's deposited right now,
Right.
and I'm trying to make sure that I see it right now. And then like the guys that are 15 are asking the guys that have been in it 20 years, like, what does this joke feel like? And they're
Yeah.
actually running it through. And I think that's where the camaraderie goes in. So that's why you have a guy like Sinbad that's been in it for over 30 years, can do every single room, everybody.
Bill Burr's another example, man.
Or-
Like,
I think Burr is his own thing, because I've seen him like three or four times in headlining capacities where I saw him at Oddball like a couple years ago, and it was and the crowd was quiet. Like they didn't react to a lot of his punchlines.
Huh.
They said and his voice traveled like far back. He, like somebody I think from like 10 rows back, like heckled him, and he heard him. He was like, what was that? And he came back at him because the audience was like silent.
wow.
And then I've also had a chance to see him in like a more arena space, to where it's not out like Burgettstown, like Burgettstown is,
Right.
in like a more intimate space where it's like everybody else was just laughing from like bit one, boom, he had him, and he was just like like every single time they were just like rolling over in laughter. So for him, I think it's a bit different as opposed to like Sinbad, who's working like cruise ships and doing
Yeah.
clean stuff and he just got finished working with Rel to where he can like do acting, but his stand-up is still like, God, I saw him back in 90, like I think it was like 89, 90, whenever that first half-hour special dropped, before he had a Different World, and he was still very funny. He did some with Preacher Man in like 92, 93.
Okay. Yeah.
Like all that stuff is still like stuff you could tell to a 10-year-old and
Right.
a 90-year-old, and they will
They'll get it.
laugh.
They'll get it.
He's still able to ride that wave,
Yeah.
and that's like
It's
separate
impressive.
from that's
Yeah.
separate from like Bill Burr. I don't think you could tell his marriage joke to
I guess
a
that's
10-year-old.
true. Yeah.
Because I think he's also dropping like a more than a few 4-letter words. He's talking about concepts that will be like, the 10-year-old will be just like, what is this guy talking about? Whereas if Sinbad's telling you a joke about like regular stuff, it's like at 10, it's like, oh yeah, that's how mom acts, man.
Right,
That's
right.
how mom and dad. Oh, that's funny.
I get it. Right.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, dude, we're at 41. I appreciate you doing this a lot, man. It's great. We've been trying to do this for a while.
A while,
A
to
while.
say the least. It's
Say
been
the least.
before he was. Whenever we started talking about doing this, he was one of the defiant guys. It was like a year and a half. No, this is how it's gonna be. This is how my jokes are
I
gonna
was?
be. I got the sense of, if it's not you, it was like the people you were around whenever we were starting to talk about coming in.
Really?
Yeah, and then it's like I listened to a couple episodes, and I was like, you know what? I said yes initially, but then whenever I said, like, I got like the grasp of your interviewing style amongst the other comics, I was like, you know what? I still want to be able to do it, because once again, like I said, whenever you're a year in or a year and a half or anything else like that, if you're passionate enough to be able to do a podcast and think about it, and I've seen your ease amongst like how your guests amongst other shows, I was like, you know what? This is how I want to be able to check this guy out.
I
coming
appreciate
into
that,
his
man.
career.
I appreciate that a lot. So I'm gonna ask you again. I appreciate that a lot. That's very nice of you to say.
Yeah.
Too. So if you listen to an episode, I'm gonna ask you this question. I started dating Monica. You met Monica. You've met Monica. She's blonde.
Yes.
She's cute. She's a blonde girl.
Yes.
We started dating about a year and a couple months ago. Her friends asked me this question on the way into the relationship. I'm gonna ask you this question as well. So Brandon, you're at a bar. The night is going poor. There was a game of darts. Somebody put their hand up. Dart went right through all of their fingers because he put it this way against the board. It was a poor choice. Quicksand in the back has swallowed up the pool table. A lot of Asian couples. It's very sad. Very sad night. It was a racist quicksand pit as well. It's bad. But it
It's still a little bit of the year 1.5 coming out. We'll go with that.
But it is also karaoke night, and it's your job to save the entire night by song. What song are you singing?
What song am I singing? Closing Time.
Closing. That's great. Easy. Why? Tell me why you're singing it.
Because after all that stuff has happened, you can't come back from that. You got to call an ambulance.
You
You got to
can't
call
be like that.
you
You have to find a song that's gonna save the night. Not we're gonna go home.
a song that's going to save the night.
No, I keep closing time.
Well, that's the thing. Well, if I wanted to find one that would save it,
Save the night.
I'd probably go with Belle Biv DeVoe, Poison, because that's something that's on every single top 40 one. It's something we hear ad nauseum. Someone's like, I got a Darth in my hand. Never trust a big bun to smile. Oh, I'm still going, buddy. I'm still going. This girl is poison. I'm doing my 2-step. I'm losing consciousness. I'm still doing my 2-step, and can't get her out of my mind. Losing conscious. Give me something. That's the only thing I can think of.
That's great.
Because as you're going down, you're gonna keep quoting the song.
Listen, I don't even want the song that's. I don't want the song that's gonna save the night. I just want your reasoning. I just want the why. That's all I want. And you gave me a great why. That's great. Anything you want to plug, promote?
Yeah. As of Saturday the 11th, I'll be at Millvale Music Festival.
Yes.
I'll be doing somewhere between the 1 and 2:30 block.
Okay.
But I'm probably going to be around also checking out a few of the other comedians that are on, because it's like comedians all day. This is something that they've done their first year, so I'm thankful to be a part of that. And congratulations also to all the other comics that are also a part of Millvale Music Fest that I'll have a chance to see.
Your episode comes out on the 13th.
Okay, so
Oh.
there's so there's that, and also all right. So hey,
I'm
Millvale
glad you
Music,
say congratulations.
yeah, Millvale Music Fest was a success. Everybody, thank you guys for coming out.
Killed
there.
it.
Yeah, they gave me 15 minutes. Netflix was there.
The industry.
They're talking about me maybe getting like my 5 minutes as part of like the Pittsburgh scene.
That's exciting.
So
That's exciting.
they went from like the half hour to national stuff to 15 minutes
15
to just
minutes.
like the New
Now
York guys.
it's- yeah.
Now
Now it's 5 minutes.
yeah, now they're giving me my type 5.
Right.
So I'll be my episode will probably drop in like February 31st. So look out for it then.
That's great. I'm excited.
2025.
I'm
They're
gonna plug
gonna let me
it.
do
I'm
that.
gonna plug it.
And then also, coming up on June 1st at Community Forge at 8 o'clock, I will be the opening comic for Tennille Tenacity Watkins. She's going to be taping her special for UWeb TV. UWeb TV is a website, uwebtv.com, and also they're going to be launching their app on their phone with just comedy content. Ed Bailey was there. They taped this special in February, and it should also be on the app. And once Tennille tapes, her content will be put up there, and you might get about 15 to 20 minutes of your humble interview person.
That's so fucking great.
So I'm looking forward to that on June 1st, 8 o'clock at Community Forge here in Pittsburgh. There's a flyer circulating. More details, feel free to go to uwebtv.com. You could go to my Instagram. You could go to my Facebook page, and I'll be able to reach out to you from there.
Cool.
Also, my YouTube, the Comedy Stylings of Brandon Johnson. It has a couple videos up there. I'm still trying to work on it, still trying to get some stuff out there. And also in the summer, I submitted to the Harlem Comedy Festival, which is coming up. And I want to say,
Are you in that?
I'm still waiting to hear back from them. So I
Yeah.
submitted to Harlem Comedy Festival and Fifth Borough Comedy Festival. Those would be coming up, I want to say, in September and late, and I think earlier part of August.
Okay.
So I'm still waiting to hear back from them to see if I got in. And
Good luck.
yeah, so those are that's what I'm working on.
It's laser, dude. That's great. You feel good?
Yeah, man. I feel good. It's weird because I've got still other shows that are coming up maybe later that I'm still have yet to get notice from, or it's still like it's like a iron in the fire.
I understand.
So I'm still waiting before I'm able to comment on that.
Cool, man. That's great. Well, you get to sign us off. You get to say anything you'd like. I've had people say inspirational things. People say degrading things. You can say whatever you like, Brandon.
All right. Well, first, thanks once again, Nate, for allowing me to be a part of
no
this.
It's a pleasure having you.
Yeah, if I have a chance to come back on here, I will, and
Absolutely.
hopefully we've accumulated more time. I will say this to any other comedian that may be listening, if you're starting out, and maybe if you're like me that's like 5 or 6 years in, and you think you may have hit a wall or you may have hit a stalemate, keep fighting for your yes. Keep fighting for it, because it only takes one. And you may get turned down for the comedy festival. You may not hear back from the Improv. You may not get booked for a long time. But if you continue to keep on writing, keep on coming out to either open mics, keep on coming up with some sort of content and putting it out in front of people, people are going to see it in some form or another. You maybe have to get industrious and put it out online, or just keep coming back to wherever comedy feels comfortable for you. But make sure that people are able to see it. And once you get that one yes, that's all it takes to take off. Whether you're Kevin Hart, whether you're Dave Attell, whether you're any other working comic now, they had to fight for that yes. So like The Rock says, you have to be like a lot of times one of the hardest workers in the room. If you have that ability and you can see maybe 10 years down the line, and that's a goal for yourself, don't lose that. Don't lose hope. Hopefully on my marathon that I'm in with this comedy thing, I'll have a chance to run a lap with you or be with you at some point. But if you're starting out, make sure that you're in it for the long run. Be in it for the ups and downs. For everybody else that's already in it, stay in it. Our breakthrough's coming through. I know mine certainly is. And if you're already on Netflix, Comedy Central or something, come holla at me at the right time. If you think I need some more work, then I'll keep on working. But we will eventually see one another.
Can I give you a high five?
You can.
That was the best. That was the best closing I've ever heard for this podcast. There's a reason you're episode number 60.
Good.
Thank you, Brandon.
Die for you, would you die?